Are you looking for an escape from manufactured truth wrapped in selfish agenda? Don't you just want to have a real and raw conversation, all masks and rules aside? That's what you're getting here at Titan Evolution Podcast. Get rid of all the nonsense information and discuss everything under the sun without filters. Listen to real stories of real people who will put your current perspectives to the test, guide you on living the life you truly want, and see everything free from judgment and pretenses. Time to get rid of those unhealthy environments and let your authentic self shine. Here are your hosts, Travis Johnson and Carol Carpenter.
There goes. Got it.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I'm Carol Carpenter, and that is my co-host, Travis Johnson. And we have a special guest on the podcast today, Dean Wegner. And Dean is a veteran and entrepreneur. And in 2017, he launched Authentically American, a veteran-owned, American-made premium apparel brand, donating 10% of profits to veteran and first responder charities. Dean and Authentically American have been featured in Forbes Magazine, Fox News, NASDAQ, Newsmax TV, and SiriusXM Radio. Welcome, Dean.
Honored to be a guest, Carol and Travis. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being on the show and making time.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And, given the stories I've heard about this podcast and the dialogues you have, I'm part excited, but also a little nervous.
Don't be. It's just really coffee with friends, right, Travis? It's just coffee with friends.
Yeah, in that I have friends, but I don't drink coffee. Is that what you mean?
I'll drink enough for both of us.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. I'm one of those.
Carol, here was mine from today. So
cheers.
Yes. I will be with you, even though Travis is abstaining.
Thank you.
I'm abstaining. There's a good portion of the world that's not interested in coffee, and usually we just keep that to ourselves. And then the follow-up question is always, do you drink tea, or what kind of tea do you drink? And I'm like, why must I have a hot caffeine option in my repertoire? It's not needed. 22 years in the Navy, never needed it. I don't know what it is about you guys that are so weak that you can't get your day going without coffee.
Oh, dude, don't you even start. We're going to start throwing daggers first thing this morning. Seriously now.
Well, for me and Dean, it's afternoon, so.
You guys are buttheads.
Yeah, we're shifting wave 2 of the caffeine, so.
Oh, that's perfect.
Love caffeine. Hey, I'm from Seattle. Let's just say we know our coffee. We love our coffee.
I mean,
my youngest son, Carol, he's only 12, but he claims that he should have a right to drink coffee because we adopted him from Ethiopia. And that's the
I was going to ask you,
coffee.
About that. So that I find that extremely interesting. How did you come about adopting your son from Ethiopia?
Well, to give you a quick background, Carol. So my wife, Kelly, and I, we've been married 28 years, and our priorities in life align with God, family, and country. And we've got 4 amazing kids. So we've got 2 daughters, 24 and 21. We have an 18-year-old son, and my 12-year-old son we adopted 10 years ago from Ethiopia. And here's a shocking statistic. There's 150 million orphans in the world who don't have a mom or dad.
Oh, geez.
Who don't have a loving home. And my wife, Kelly, and I, we talked and prayed about it, and we couldn't adopt all of them, but we could adopt one. And it's amazing. He's been with us 10 years, and what an incredible blessing he's had. And it's amazing just the domino effect, because we are stretched with 4 kids and can't imagine having anything else on top of life. But, the number of people that have adopted after meeting him, after hearing his story, just being a part of it. And it's incredible just to see the impact. And even my oldest daughter, who's not really dating anyone right now, she's told us that she's planning, when she gets married at some point, wants to have kids to also adopt.
Oh, that's just so sweet. So your son sounds like he's a negotiator.
He is. And he has these big, bright cue ball eyes, and it is hard to say no.
Yeah.
And we found this out, I forget, Carol, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. We were on a family cruise, and The daughters had their room, our sons had their room, and my wife and I had our room. And we walked in one morning, and if you've been on a cruise, you can order whatever you want in room service.
Oh, dear
So he
God.
was there just sipping a cup of coffee, and this was like his second or third one. And he does not run short on energy. So you can imagine he was just bouncing off the wall all day long. So
Hanging all over the place.
Yeah. So we had to put in a special request to the staff saying, no caffeine, no coffee, come to this room.
Just like Americans oppressing other countries. I can't hardly believe it. As a 5-time foster kid, I really appreciate the fact that you would reach out and extend your home, extend your family to a kid from another country. That means a lot.
Yeah, I remember you and I talking that before, Travis. And, I made 2 trips to Ethiopia when we adopted him. And the first one was to appear before the judge. And the general message was, Dean and Kelly, you do know this is a lifetime commitment. This is not just 6 months, a year, a couple of years. This is a lifetime commitment. And I could not imagine it any other way. It's been an incredible journey. It's not been easy because he's super busy and, it's enough for 2 or 3 kids on his own, but it's been an incredible journey.
Yeah, it certainly has been. It's what's the gotcha day on that? When someone adopts a kid, they call it gotcha day, and it's something to be celebrated and remembered.
It is. So that is May 29th of 2012. Not many people know the gotcha day history, Travis.
Yeah, I know. That's why we got to talk about things that people don't know on shows like this.
Yes.
Opening up your home is a big deal, and that means a lot. What else would you say makes you a Titan?
So I think that's a personal example, Travis, but I am really embracing the idea that one of the things that drives me is this insatiable desire to know that I'm making a difference. And that was a personal motivation. My wife, Kyle, and I said, here's an opportunity for us to make a difference in a scale's life. But that's what ultimately drove me to be an entrepreneur, going from big business, Fortune 500 companies to be an entrepreneur to ultimately make a difference. And to me, that's a big part of being a Titan is how you step up and how you, in everything you do, strive to make a difference.
Yeah, I love the phrase showing up. When you show up and you're present and you're there and you are persevering, that is amazing. So when you got out of the military, then that's when you went to work for Mars and Procter & Gamble, like immediately after?
It's funny, Carol, because I tell everybody now I'm a veteran and an entrepreneur, but when I left the Army in 2000, couldn't even spell entrepreneur.
That's why there's spell check.
Yeah.
Hey guys, there's spell check. I'm just saying,
I still use it to this day, but I think back to those days, and what I've realized is so often we're a product of our environment. And had an amazing family growing up. And my dad was a 30-year engineer for Alcoa. And most of his friends, most of our neighbors work for big companies. And when I left the Army in 2000, what did I think I was going to do? Work for a big company. That is the only world I knew. And that is what I did. I worked for Procter & Gamble, worked for Mars. And both of them are incredible companies. They're both world-class marketing and branding companies. Worked on brands like Crest and Tide and M&M's. But what I realized, Carol, at one point, Procter & Gamble is an $80 billion company.
Yeah.
80 billion. Insane. Mars, Travis, is half the size, but still a $40 billion company. And what I realized at one point is that although I had fairly big jobs and was really well paid, if you pull me out, the next guy steps right up and the machine doesn't skip a beat. And that's the way it's designed. And I truly wrestled with, am I making a difference? Am I truly making a difference if I'm not replaceable? And that was the initial catalyst to become an entrepreneur.
I like that. Did you have that same feeling leaving the military, that you weren't making a difference?
I think it was less so there, Travis. I think what had me feeling that sense of pride in making a difference was serving our country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you served in the Navy, and I'm sure you felt this too. It was a higher sense of purpose. It wasn't, you are part of a machine, part of a cog in the machine, and it's part of it, but ultimately you're serving a higher sense of purpose.
Yeah.
And I thought back, my 7 years were a relative period of calm, but I thought back to the first Gulf War while I was at West Point, and it really hits home on why you wear that uniform. So I wasn't really missing that there. It's a longer story on the opportunity to really step up and be rewarded for performance, but that was not missing there. But it really started to be missing in big companies.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. In the part of the Navy that I was in, we report to U.S. Stratcom, which for people listening that don't know, they take care of all the nuclear weapons and all the systems involved with that. It's a fantastic place to be. It's a fantastic system to be in, but someone that's geared for entrepreneurship like you or like myself or like Carol, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because the Navy that reports to Stratcom, we really just follow what the procedures are. There's no room for growth. There's no room for creativity. There's no room for that. And when I started podcasting, when I started learning about entrepreneurship, and I realized the Navy didn't have a place for me anymore, it was nice to find out after I'd already done 22 years and I could retire and get a paycheck right away. Right. But like, as soon as I learned that stuff, I knew it applied to me. Like I couldn't be in the Navy any longer, because yes, I get paid in the 1st and 15th, but there's no room for me. There was no room for Travis. Yeah. There was only room for whoever was in that uniform. It didn't matter who they were. As long as they wore that uniform, there was room. But the person inside the uniform, it didn't matter. And that bothered me a lot.
Interesting to hear this say that, Travis, because this was after I left Procter & Gamble, after I left Mars, but I learned about the word entrepreneur. And I realized after hearing that word, that was what I was within those big companies, because Carol, so often I would hear people say, Dean, what are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean? And they would say, well, that's not the Procter way, or that's not the Martian way. And I would hear stories like, hey, we've been doing this for 10 years, 20 years. We've been doing it forever, and it works. And I never did things just to go ahead and shake it up. But sometimes, you look at things a little bit differently. You look at things creatively, and didn't know it back then. But that was that entrepreneurial spirit within me, just waiting to get out.
Yep.
Well, did you guys find being in the military too, like so many big companies hire, veterans, and typically if you're in the military, you follow orders really well, right? And so maybe there's a reason why they pick veterans, because they know that, there's a great deal of them that will just follow orders, not ask questions. And did you find that they did that in these big companies, that there was quite a few hirees that were veterans?
That was absolutely the case, Carol. And to your point, I mean, Travis, you remember there were SOPs and there were checklists and there were op boards. I mean, it was a very structured plan. And in a big company like Procter & Gamble, they had a whole military recruiting group. And that was a whole, program. How do we bring in, people that have great leadership experience in the military, have the incredible commitment, character, work ethic, and then apply that in business and teach them what they need to know. So it was a very much, to your point, Carol, pronounced recruiting strategy, to bring in a lot of junior military officers into these big companies.
It was like a plug and play.
Yes.
Yeah. The 3 things that I've heard were leadership, discipline, and knowledge of systems, because that is exactly what the corporate world uses. A few years ago, I can't remember when I read this, they had a stat that said that there was a naval officer that served in some capacity on the board of every single Fortune 500 company because of what we had to understand about systems. If you want to know something specific about this plaque right behind me, right here, right, you would ask the Air Force, because whatever that one thing is, they go 10 miles deep on. They know all about that. But if you want to know a system, you would talk to the Navy, because we were always out on our own. We had to do everything without other people, right? You've got 5,000 people in an aircraft carrier. You've got to fight your own fires. You've got to cut hair. You've got to police the area. You have to paint. You have to do everything. Right? The plumbing breaks on a ship. You're not calling a plumber to fly them out to the aircraft carrier. You have people on board that know how to do those things, plus run the reactor, right? So corporate world found out about these things long ago. And I don't know. I don't understand why small business hasn't figured this out yet. But big businesses know without a doubt that if they get naval officers, Army officers, Marine Corps officers to come into their company, that whatever department, whatever section they have, they're going to basically be hands off and let them run that because they know we know how to do it.
Very true. And you and I have both lived that firsthand.
Yeah, absolutely, Dean. Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your background, about you. Like, what is someone that's meeting you for the first time on this show? What do they have to understand about Dean in the past to understand Dean now in the future, in the present?
So one of the things that was also part of what I mentioned, Army related, was, incredible work ethic and drive and perseverance and commitment. And I had a lesson in that thanks to the Army, Travis, back after graduating from West Point. And Carol, one of the things you do your senior year at West Point is you choose which branch. And I didn't realize it back then when I first entered, but there were 18 different choices. There was infantry, the heart and soul of the armor. There was Army, there's armor, driving tanks, field artillery, all these combat arms. But then there were also all these combat support and combat service support branches. So whether it's transportation or finance or medical service, logistics. So there were a lot of choices. And I narrowed it down to two. One was infantry, which is the heart and soul of the Army. The other one was aviation. And Carol, you remember the first Top Gun, that movie?
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my favorite movies growing up. And I thought to myself, I would look ultra cool in a suit. And that is ultimately the route I went.
Yeah.
But part of me during flight school kept wondering, did I make the right choice? Because if you want to be a general in the Army, the best route to go is the infantry. They're the most, group there, and that is the legacy in the Army, and that's where it started. So I kept wondering, did I make the right choice? And at flight school, the commander made an announcement and said, guys, once in a lifetime opportunity, we're going to have a competition and send one of you to Ranger School. And I thought, Carol, here was my chance to see how the other half lived. And I was very fortunate, won that competition and found out just how miserable it is. And
be careful what you wish for.
You got it. And Travis, I didn't know it back then, but Ranger School was such great training for leading a startup. And here's why. So on day one, there were 340 of us. And there's a lot of military doctrine and tactics at Ranger School, but at its core, it's a leadership school. And what they do is they deprive you of everything you think you need to survive, namely food and sleep, and then put you in an incredibly stressful situation. So again, on day one, there were 340 of us. So for 72 days straight, if you make it straight through, you live on one meal a day and 2 to 3 hours sleep a night.
Good
so we
God.
Lost over 80% of our class. There were only 70 of us left on graduation day. And Travis, here was the tie to being an entrepreneur, because Ranger School is all about no sleep and incredible stress. And that's the life I'm living now.
Yep.
That sounds about right.
Fully relate.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
That's one example of just the commitment and work ethic and drive. And, I was also a hockey player at West Point, but I really wasn't that good. I was a fourth line grinder, and I had to work because I didn't have that great of skills. But, that is something that is just a big hallmark of me, is that I may never be the most talented. I'm not the smartest one, but, by golly, I'm going to outwork everyone.
You're not going to give up.
Mm-hmm. That was one of the great things about Michael Jordan, because he wasn't the tallest, he wasn't the fastest, he wasn't the strongest. And when he finally got a sidekick in Scottie Pippen, when he finally had someone else to take a little bit of the pressure off of him, that's what turned him into the greatest player ever, because you were never going to play with more ferocity than Michael Jordan played with. Didn't matter that
I love that series. Oh my God, The Last Dance was so beautiful. Oh my God.
See the Shaq one on HBO?
No.
Oh my God, that is
it good?
Great. Yes. It's like
okay, what's it called?
I think it's just called Shaq, but it's 4-part series. Okay. And they talk about him and his personality, because Shaq was an Army brat. His dad, when he started playing basketball, he was in Germany. and his dad was enlisted in the Army. And a lot of people don't know that stuff about him. And like
Did
Shaq today,
not.
you
I
see him in all
didn't.
these commercials because he partners and does joint ventures with all these different brands. And he's an owner. He owns something like, I'm just making up a number at this point, but it's north of 30 brands that he owns or is a
Good
major
God.
partner within. That's why you see him everywhere doing everything. And he's a big
Yeah.
jokester. By big, he's a really big jokester.
Really big.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
In one of Papa John's commercials right now, and he is an entrepreneur himself.
Absolutely, he is. Absolutely. And he credits that to Magic Johnson. When Shaq joined the Lakers, he was mentored by Magic Johnson, even though Magic was no longer playing the game. And one of the first things he taught him is, this is all going to be over someday. How much you're going to be worth, how many assets you're going to have, what businesses you're going to be involved in when this is all over, because it's going to end someday. What are you going to have when it's done?
Yeah.
He obviously listened.
He obviously listened. Like I've got a few people that I've mentored over my time, and I'm sure we all do here. And they give me a lot of credit for the things that I showed them and all that stuff. And it feels good. But if you're listening to this right now, all the advice in the world doesn't make a bit of difference if you never take any action on it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep,
The whole adage of lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Yep.
Travis, I found the hardest step is that first step.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying like, should I go? Should I go? But then when you take that first step, the momentum starts building. You start going from there. But that hardest one is that very first step, that very first big leap of faith.
Well, speaking of leap of faith, how did you get involved in the development of your company and creating your company? And was there a reason you chose this particular industry?
So, Carol, it ties back to my DNA and that insatiable desire to know that I'm making a difference. And Authentically American, we are in the apparel business. We're an apparel brand, and we've got amazing product, and it's all made here in the U.S. And to give you an idea how rare American made is, when I graduated from West Point 93, over 50% was made in the U.S. Today, it's 3.5.
Oh, that's so sad.
3.5 is all that's made here.
Yeah.
And that was the vision, Carol, 5 years ago when we launched in 2017 from a blank sheet of paper. We wanted to be in the apparel business, but we wanted to ultimately make a difference. We wanted to create American jobs. And after 5 years, I'm exhausted. I had no idea.
It's hard to be a leader.
Yeah. And, part of the reason ties back to the days at Procter & Gamble and Mars. Everything I took for granted in those big companies, supply chain, systems, process, team, cash flow, everything, we've had to build from the ground up. But as exhausted as I am even more energized because truly feel like I have an opportunity to make a difference. And it's interesting. We just recently got some macro numbers, but playing the numbers out a little bit more detail, in 2017, when we launched Authentically American from a blank sheet of paper, that number made in the US was 2.7. So 5 years later, it's now up to 3.5%. So a 30% increase in the industry, not in our business, the industry. And if we go from 3 to 6%, that will more than double the industry. And put that in perspective, think of any industry that doubles. That's what we're excited about. And, Travis, I love that you're rocking one of our polos and that you're wearing American made, but that ultimately, Carol, is the vision that we build this iconic American brand that is truly amazing product. And people have a sense of pride wearing it because they know that it's helping create American jobs. And we've got a long road ahead of us. It's been an incredible grind within COVID and everything we had to deal with, but
I
really feel like we're having an opportunity to make a difference.
What a wonderful story.
Yeah, fully agree. When you were taking that entrepreneurship step, you talk about a few of those things, but what actually drove you to start your own business and then to choose apparel as your specific industry?
Well, Travis, no one has ever accused me of being a snappy dresser, so it wasn't, the apparel I wore, but, back to not being able to spell entrepreneur, I didn't think I had it in me to start a business from scratch. And, the catalyst about wanting to make a difference. So the path I chose initially to be an entrepreneur was acquiring a business. So in 2012, bought my first business. And Travis, it'll be one that you're familiar with because it was a government contractor that produced dress uniforms for the military. So Travis, you remember the Navy broadfall trousers?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Carol, that was one of our contracts. We also
say that enthusiastically. Yeah.
So Dean might know this, but something most people don't know, that especially that are outside the military, is the military is not actually in control of their uniforms. They have contracts and different things like that. So even if they want to change, they might have a contract that goes for 12 more years to produce something that's out of date and something that's hated before they come out with something new. So then they change the contracting system to allow for more flexibility. And then you have new uniforms coming out like every 2 years. So in the Navy, I spent 22 years in the Navy. And when I joined, there were still people walking around in these dungarees, these old school prison uniforms like they would have worn in the Shawshank Redemption. That's what the Navy dungaree was that light blue shirt, dark blue jeans, and they had like boondocker boots, like the short rise. And then we went to utilities, which is just a cloth version of the jean style that it was. I've got 18 different uniforms.
Oh my God.
It's disgusting. The expense is obscene, especially when you get down to the individual and they give you something like a clothing allowance every year. If you're enlisted, if you're an officer and they change uniforms, you don't get a clothing allowance. It comes out of your pocket. And some of these uniforms, like the dress uniform, cost hundreds of dollars each. And if you're supposed to have 1, 5, or 10 sets of them, this is all coming out of your pocket, and it's not being controlled by the military. It's being controlled by the clothing manufacturer contracts to tell you what you're going to get and what you're going to wear, when and why. And to go through a change is an enormous process that takes years sometimes to get all the details done in order to create one.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's obscene.
Carol, you could tell from his reaction there was a story behind it, and
yeah. Every time I look over and I see his face and he does something, I'm like, oh, there's something going on there.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to go down that road.
Be a great poker player because you can tell right in his face.
It's funny you mentioned that because I actually have made thousands of dollars playing poker. I used to host a poker league. I used to win tournaments. The ring my wife is wearing is one that I won enough money to buy her upgraded ring for our 5-year anniversary.
Aww.
But
that's a great story there. But it sounds like there's the podcast Travis that is full of facial expression and emotion, and then there's the poker playing.
There's at least 2 Travises. Like, as much as this the raw, real, uncut story, the uncut me has facial expressions and emotional reactions. The poker Travis ain't got none of that stuff.
Puts his shades on and puts the lampshade down, and
he shuts it down. Yeah.
That's scary, Carol. You see that?
If you're not watching the video right now, you are just cheating yourselves out of a great time. You really are.
Yeah.
So Dean, I got to know something. Tell us something about yourself that most people don't know. Do you have some hidden ability? Can you cut a deck of cards with one hand? Can you solve a Rubik's Cube in under a minute? Like, what is it about you that most people don't know?
What's your superpower?
So I'll just share a fun little factoid that goes all the way back to, let's see, this would have been 1994. So Travis, I was a guest on The Price is Right. So come on down. Dean Wegner, you're the next contestant on The Price is Right.
Yeah.
No way.
Did you make it on
stage? How fun was that?
What's that?
Did you make it onto stage?
I did on stage. So it was literally Dean Wegner, come on down. You're the next contestant. And I was, Carol, the second person called.
That is awesome. How far did you go?
So this is both a fun and exciting story, but an embarrassing story because that show set a record for
all the first contestants, 3 of them stayed put the whole show.
Not all of them, but I did, Travis. I was there. So this is an example of who the winner in the family is and who the loser in the family is. So I was stuck in contestants row the entire show, and we set a record for overbids, and I was one of them helping drive it. So my parting gifts were women's sportswear and garlic tablets. So I had those nice parting gifts.
I can see that working for you, Dean.
Yeah.
Garlic
So
tablets. Oh my
a
God, I
month
remember them
later,
selling
we were
those.
back, and my wife Kelly was called. So Kelly Wegner, come on down. And I was the first 4 contestants. So the second one called. She was the very last one called. So she had one chance to get up there. And sure enough, she did. And she did the dice game. So she had a chance to win a car. And she won a Dodge Dakota truck for us. So
No way.
yeah. So Carol, you can see who the winner in the family is and who the loser in the family is.
That's
Oh my
funny.
God.
I
That
really
is
don't
funny.
take kindly to you talking down to yourself, but it is funny.
And
It's all in
Travis, this
jest.
was, I was wearing, my military uniform. And it was funny because Bob Barker, if you remember Bob, I mean, just
Oh, yeah.
fun and folksy. And after the show, he's just, entertaining, having a little fun with the crowd. And we're standing up there and he's like, Dean, when you came up here, you looked like such a winner. And here you are at the end of the show, still hanging out with me. So he had a little bit of fun, but he was a great guy and just had an incredible experience. And Travis, it was interesting because, I had an opportunity to go ahead and do some fun things. We were right there in the high desert of California, and I got on the one time, my wife got on. So we brought 3 other trips where we brought, our unit there, our company. And each of those 3 times, somebody from our unit was able to get on stage. And the story going around was like, well, Dean's best buddies with Bob Barker because every time he goes, somebody gets on the show.
Somebody got called. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Called. Yeah. That sounds like a great time, except for, you standing in contestants row, just not getting it. You find yourself like you watch the show and you like yell at the people and be like, no, don't do what I did. Do this
I have
instead.
not in a long time, but back then it was fun to watch and just think, what? I was in their shoes. I was there. It was fun, just a surreal experience.
I know from watching the show myself that I have no idea how much those things cost. I'm either way over or way under. I have no clue.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, is it based on like California prices? Maybe that's why. I don't know. Is it based on the national average? I don't know.
I have no idea, but it is a fun show. And that Carol was my very first national TV appearance. And, it wasn't until launching Authentically American that had to be an opportunity to be back on national TV.
Nice. It's funny. Price is Right was the one thing that my grandmother would watch nonstop. And she didn't really speak English. And she would sit in front of the TV and yell. And it was so hysterical. She was adorable. And I would just sit there and just laugh my ass off because she didn't speak a word of English, and she'd be yelling in a different language. Like, you dummy. Wrong.
My grandma was the same way, Carol. She would tune in every day.
It was entertainment for them, for sure.
No doubt about it.
I'm waiting for you, Travis.
I'm waiting for you, Carol.
He's got the poker face on there.
He does.
He's waiting for you to flinch.
He's looking at something.
I'm looking full transparency. I'm looking at the prices right on Wikipedia right now because I don't think Bob Barker was the first host, or was he? Was he the first guy?
I don't know if he was the first, but he was the longest running.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why I care. Like the only time
I don't know either.
Price is Right, like when I was sick at home, on the couch eating terrible like Campbell's chicken noodle soup in the 80s. And you're like, what's on daytime TV? It's all these soap operas and a couple of game shows and just really bad television, like overall.
But you couldn't choose, right? Because it's whatever was on at the time. It's not like we have nowadays where we can just dial it up and, put it on.
Well, I never had cable either. So like, it was either like channel U at the top of the dial or sometimes I would get like one other channel. So it was either that or nothing. And we
You
didn't
needed
have
the bunny ears.
Yeah, yeah. We didn't have like a library, right? We didn't have like a lot of books or anything. I had either terrible, crappy daytime TV, or I could like play with Legos.
Yeah.
Which wasn't a bad option, but like that was the end of my options.
Mm.
Yeah.
Amazing to think back to those days, Carol, with the rabbit ears and, playing with the
Oh,
antennas.
I remember. You would
Would.
stand there, you lift a leg, you lift an arm, they'd say stay so everybody could watch it clearly. It was so bad.
And me and so many other kids were the original remote control. I mean, back to the old
Yep.
knobs. And my dad would be like, son, switch it. And I'd stand up there and keep switching and switching. And
I swear to God, like the really young folks that are listening to this don't remember the rotary phone, don't remember any of that stuff, right? If you talk about, I have a Discover card that I use, and it looks like a cassette tape. And no joke, only the people when I'm using it, that are old enough to know what it is, love it.
Mm-hmm.
The youngins,
I
don't even think they know. They don't even recognize what it is. They just think it's a design. And it just makes me laugh. I'm like, oh, wow, I'm old.
Well, they showed Superman, the original Superman, to a group of second graders, and they liked it. It was exciting, but there was a question that they didn't expect to get asked at the end of it. You know what the question was?
Mm-mm.
What's a phone booth?
No effing way.
Yeah, they don't know what phone booths are. How many payphones do you see around town?
You don't, do you? Yeah.
If you do see
You don't pay
one,
attention.
if you do see one, it's a little cubby, right? But it's not a booth. You can't open the door and go inside and shut the door. It's a little cubby or something on the wall. It's not a booth. They just don't know because they've never seen it before.
So funny. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, little nuances.
Well,
nuances.
Like when they came out with cell phones, one of they asked a question that had never been asked before on the telephone. Where are you? Because in order to call someone before, you had to know where they were to dial the right number to get them on the phone.
Mm.
When cell phones came, you can literally be anywhere. So where are you right now? Because you weren't at your desk. You weren't at home.
True,
I'm in the grocery store.
That's
In the grocery store on your cell phone. It's amazing. It's mind-blowing.
We take that for granted now. Like you're talking with headsets, walking through Costco, having a conversation and getting, the food for your family, right? I mean, nowadays we don't even think about it.
Now they get like these little implants that sit inside your ear, and gals with like hair that comes over. I was having dinner on the way back from Florida this last time, and there's this girl over at the end of the bar talking to herself. And then I hear something and I see where she's looking, and I'm like, she's on the phone. You cannot tell by looking at her. So if you walk by and just hear, you just think this woman's talking to herself. And
she's insane.
Back in the 80s, like that was cause for concern. Like, did you hear that old man Witherspoon was talking to himself again at the grocery store? And now it's commonplace.
Yeah.
That's the origin of the name mobile phone.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Literally go anywhere.
Right. So what's next for you, Dean?
So I'm pretty boring right now. It's, God, family, country, and then being an entrepreneur. So you had mentioned, being present earlier. So that's one of the things I'm very intentional about, in the midst of, the long, long hours, Carol, that, being an entrepreneur that you can put in, we still make sure we make time for date nights with my wife. We still make sure that we are present and coaching and being there with our 4 kids. So that will always be there, Travis. We also still keep the daily PT routine going. They're not an hour-long workouts that I like. They're quicker, 20, 30 minutes. So, really take care of the personal side. But as exhausting and as tiring as the last 5 years have been, incredibly energizing because we have just been grinding away and we've been slowly growing 20, 30, 40% a year. So in the midst of COVID, we were pleased with that. But I really feel, Carol, and you'll relate to this being an entrepreneur, we're about to be a overnight success story 5 years in the making.
Yep. Everybody thinks it's overnight success, but holy cow, man, it takes years to get there.
And I'll show you one innovative product. And Travis, I think you have one or at least seen it. So our sweat activated.
What?
This is my
Travis
least
knows.
favorite.
Carol's got like,
This is my least favorite demonstration that he does, because he's going to pull out an Army shirt right now, and he's going to spray water on it, because when you go to the workout and you sweat, it's sweat activated, and there's words that show up that you can't see
Carol,
right
I
now.
had to do this given the Army-Navy
Yeah.
rivalry here.
Yeah, I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to let you give the demo, and I'm going to turn my camera off.
Carol, I'm sure
come on.
So we're going to have a little fun with this now with our friend Travis, the Navy veteran, because this is part of our collegiate license. So you can see the Go Army printed. And one thing to highlight, Carol, I wish you were here in person, because if you could feel this, you would be like, Dean, that's got to be the softest t-shirt I've ever felt.
Yeah.
And that's by design, because who doesn't love a nice soft t-shirt? The other thing is the print.
Mm-hmm.
Think of the ones that you bought in the past, most of them in your closet, they have that heavy plastisol ink. And on a hot summer day, it will stick to your chest.
Yep.
You wash it a few times, it will crack. And ours are designed to be soft across the board. So the fabric, the print, to include tagless, because nobody likes a tag. But here's now the innovation that Travis loves, this sweat activated innovation. So the great Army-Navy rivalry. So, Carol, watch what happens when I spray the shirt.
For those of you not watching the video, he sprayed the shirt and it said "Go Army" on the front, and then the sweat activation says "Beat Navy."
That's hysterical.
So, Carol, all in honor of my good friend Travis, that we had to do this.
You know, it's funny, the rivalry between services, because my daughter was 15 before she ever saw the Navy lose to Army in the Army-Navy game. Because
there was quite a run there, and it was a painful one.
14-year winning streak. They actually have they have a satire site called Duffel Blog, where they make fun of all the things in the military. And there was an article that came out probably about the 12th win. It says that the Army football was losing on purpose so the Army officers would know what it would be like in the battlefield.
Now, I don't like that story as much, but
oh, what's wrong, Dean? You don't like when the shoe is on the other foot? Weird.
Oh my God, dig it in.
Yeah.
Well, Carol, here's where we'll tie to, back to being an entrepreneur and being an overnight success story, 5 years in the making, because we have just been grinding away. And, this shirt that everyone loves, we have done hundreds of custom designs, and the minimum is only 24. So we've had
that is such a low minimum.
It is. And that was an intentional choice, because the most common business in the U.S. is the small business.
Yeah.
So on the client side of our business, we now have Fortune 500 companies. We've got big veteran charities that Travis knows, like Wounded Warrior and Tunnel to Towers, which Travis is one who made that introduction. Team Red, White, and Blue. So we've had over 150 veteran charities that we work with. But, Carol, the minimum's 24, but we literally last week had a top 10 accounting firm order 27,000. 27,000.
Insane.
Yes.
Freaking insane. Yes. So is that technology, the sweat activated, is that, something you guys developed, or was this just, how did it come about?
So it is not proprietary, but I believe business is the ultimate team sport. I mentioned how I'm a hockey player and still playing a men's beer league now. But even if you're a sole proprietor, you're going to need a banker. You're going to need an attorney. You're going to need a CPA. And we have contract manufacturers all across the U.S. and 11 states. So, Carol, this T-shirt we make in Texas, so the raw fabric, but we have somebody else that helps us with the printing that we contract to and provide the specs. And 2 years ago, I was at his shop, and he's like, Dean, I just came across this incredible technology. And he described it, how it's sweat activated, and a hidden message magically appears. Is like, would you like to do some testing with me? I'm like, I absolutely would. That's incredible. I love to exercise, love to get after it. And it has been a home run, because apparel is ubiquitous. Carol, I joke that unless you live in a nudist colony, you make a choice every day on what shirt you're going to wear. And this has been so unique and so innovative. It's something that really sets us apart. But the technology has been around for 10 years.
Oh, I've never even seen it before. Now, the question is, does it only work on light fabrics or does it work on dark fabrics too? Is there a certain range of color that you have to get those shirts in order for it to work where you can see it?
Well, Travis, as advertised, you told me Carol is sharp because she's picking up on, the technology, because it works great on medium colors.
Okay.
And the two that we found it works out well is on the athletic gray and an olive color.
Oh,
because
interesting.
the way this works is, if you can see, for example, the V here in navy, think of that old Scotch Guard technology. It's oversimplified, but in essence, where you see the light letters, Scotch Guard's applied so the moisture doesn't penetrate. So if this is a black shirt, or on the opposite end of the spectrum, a white shirt, you don't see
Can't
that
see it.
contrast, so the letters don't appear.
Right. So it has to be of some color.
Yeah,
Yes.
The water's got to
So
turn it
the
dark.
medium tones work out well.
Yeah.
Yep. And then athletic gray, since, just like the name implies, athletic, you're there working out, that works out well. But we've also had the olive color be very popular because we serve a lot of veterans. And Travis, olive is a pretty popular color, that olive green with the military.
I don't get it. That must be an Army Marine Corps thing, because the Navy and Air Force prefer blue.
I love how he just kind of rolls his eyes like, I don't get it.
Well, we've been rolling our eyes at each
Army
other
guys
for a couple of years already, so this isn't new for us.
Yeah.
I love it. I think that's amazing technology. I didn't even know about it. It's so cool.
And Carol, that's really ultimately what's most important, because we are a consumer brand. And we talk extensively about being veteran owned. We highlight how important it is to choose American made when you can, because you help create American jobs. But at the end of the day, nothing else matters unless we deliver an amazing product experience.
Got to be quality.
If you said, hey, Dean, that looks so cool, I'm going to order one for my boyfriend, and your boyfriend gets it, and you had hyped up how this isn't a great American made company and how it's all American made, and he's like, Carol, the shirt stinks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who cares where it's made, because he's never wearing it and you're never buying from us again.
Yeah, well, he's Canadian, so he may not feel the same.
So we've got a whole bunch of different designs, but the whole point is, whether it's a t-shirt, socks, polo, that's what's most important, that we deliver an amazing product experience.
See, I think you can actually sell this in Canada, right? Like, buy American made, support the military that protects you.
Mm-hmm. I'll leave that one alone.
Carol's got her looks going.
I don't think he's going to buy that one.
That's all right. He's not in charge of buying dollars for anyone, is he? Just his own personal stuff. I don't know. Does Ollie have a company? I have no idea.
He does. Well, he used to have 3, and they got shut down with COVID.
I've got a couple of friends in Canada, and I've got my head of my production team is just outside Toronto. And the stuff that she tells me about how Canada is going, I'm sure Ollie feels the same way. It's just, it's almost like a totalitarian
He's depressed about it. Yeah, he's depressed about it. He used to be so like proud to be Canadian. Mm-hmm. And then some of the stuff started happening politically, and he's just like, I don't know anymore. Like it's changed so much.
Yeah. Carol, being a hockey player, I spent a lot of time in Canada growing up, driving over the border to play in a lot of tournaments. But COVID is one example, because I have some friends that are in Canada that are also business owners, and it was a tough business environment.
Yeah.
The one friend I'm specifically thinking of, he was in the event business, so he
went bankrupt
because
really
there was
bad.
no events happening.
Yeah. And one of Ollie's businesses was social media. And when they shut down, nobody could work because you couldn't go anywhere, and it was bad. So now he does software designing development. He creates systems for businesses, and he's freaking good and efficient because I use him.
Travis, this is the serial entrepreneur couple with Carol and Ollie.
Yep.
Both
Yeah,
of them
and he,
own
well,
multiple businesses.
what you don't know is he is a championship worldwide motorcycle racer as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Travis,
Yeah,
you need
so-
to have Carol back on as a guest and get the full stories out here.
Well, we've had Carol as a guest, and we've had me as a
He
guest.
has. Yep.
Yeah.
We interviewed each other.
Yep.
Right.
Actually, it's two of our best episodes. We've gotten more downloads, I think, from our interviews of each other than just about anything else.
Really? I had no idea.
Oh yeah.
Get the story behind the host.
Yeah, the story behind the host. Why does it matter? How does he have that deep, sexy voice? I have no idea. It's God given. So, Dean, as we're getting ready to wrap up here, what's the one place you want people to go find and connect with you at?
So our website, if you want to learn more about our brand, authenticallyamerican.us is the best place. And whether you're an individual consumer that wants your favorite Army, Navy, we've got all the military schools. If you want Authentically American branded, you know what? Didn't get a chance to show these fun socks. Travis, I think you've got a pair.
I do, and they are my favorite
awesome.
pair of socks to wear. I wore those at the Miss Oklahoma pageant when I was emceeing.
There we go.
Yeah.
And that's the second time now on a national broadcast because, Carol, the last time we were on national TV in front of 2 million people on Fox and Friends, the host said these are his favorite pair of socks.
Oh, wow.
And you can
That's
imagine the
awesome.
spike in traffic. You can imagine the sales. And, back to the earlier point about consumer experience, it was interesting because he didn't say anything about them being American made. He said they're so soft. They're so comfortable. Just like Travis said, they're his favorite pair. But when you have an experience like that, you read the fine print where it says designed in Nashville, made in North Carolina. So we make our socks in North Carolina, our t-shirts in Texas. So the polo Travis is wearing in California. So 11 states across the U.S. So whether you want some of our collegiate items or whether you want something authentically American branded like the socks or t-shirts or polos, that's the best place. If you are a business, if you're a fellow entrepreneur, Carol, like yourself, if you run a charity, you work for a business, because every business, every charity buys polos.
Yep.
Buys t-shirts. So no matter what area you are, whether you're an individual consumer or more of an organization, our website's the best spot. And then if you want to connect with me personally, LinkedIn is a great spot. So that's an easy way for both of us.
That's fantastic, Dean. You talked earlier about perseverance. What would you tell someone that's going through a rough time right now?
So tied to perseverance, Travis, is one that you got to be willing to get up each and every day and, being a hockey player, getting the corners and fight, or just being whatever it takes. But the other piece of advice I would say is don't go alone. And I think that's hard, especially for veterans. Like, you're trained, to be strong. You're trained to persevere, but you know what? Life is a team sport. And if you've got something challenging, if you've got something that you're going through, don't do it alone. Engage your spouse, engage your boyfriend, call a friend, call somebody. And it's been humbling for me on this entrepreneurial journey. Carol, never been an entrepreneur before. The number of people that I've reached out, and I reached out sheepishly saying, hey, would you be willing to help me out? And they were just blown away that one I would ask, and they went out of their way to help me. So that's what I would say, Travis. If you're really struggling, if you're challenging, don't just isolate yourself. Phone a friend. We talked about game shows before. So, that whole game show, phone a friend.
Phone a friend. Yeah. Yeah. Mentor, find a mentor, find somebody that will guide you, and find one that has gone down the road before that can keep you from all the obstacles, and sometimes we do need to go through those obstacles, but at the same time, if somebody can help you out and teach you a few things, and therefore you can give back to somebody else.
I know I personally love sharing my experience, because every time I do, people are so shocked to find out the things that we all go through, and I'm willing to talk about them. It's like, once you talk about it the first time, you give other people in the space permission to be open and honest and forthright with whatever's going on in their world. And it makes it just that much easier for everyone involved.
Yep. They're not alone.
They're not alone. Hey, Dean, from Carol and I, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Honored to be a guest. And Travis, always honored to call you a friend. And Carol, you're my new friend.
There you go.
All the way out in Washington.
That's right.
That's all for this episode of Titan Evolution Podcast. We hope this no-holds-barred conversation opened your eyes on what it takes to live a genuinely happy life according to your own terms. Now that you've treated yourself to such a refreshing discussion, you cannot listen to nonsense content anymore. Be sure not to miss an episode by subscribing to the show at TitanEvolutionPodcast.com. Don't forget to share the word so more people can be enlightened, informed, and entertained. Thank you for listening.